so we will join this regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansurg Board of Trustees already in progress. Item number 4 on the agenda is any changes to that? If any board members have any changes?
I actually do. So Vicky added a permissive referendum for the new ambulance, sort of at the 11th hour. And hopefully everyone had a chance to at least notice that that's there, but I'd like to add that, I guess, under new business or under my report.
And I have one of those for police repairs to a vehicle.
So
that I just put in the Dropbox.
We'll do both of those under your commissioner reports. Any other changes to the agenda? Where is that from this referendum
For the police,
for ambulance?
that should be that's up there. 210.
What's the title?
210-20 ambulance tires monitors. And there's one for DPW too. There's a new F-250 truck that W was supposed to do. Right here. And I don't see one for police.
Okay. Any other changes to the agenda? Next item, we have approval of the draft minutes of the January 13th, 2020 board meeting, which I'm pulling up.
Tammy, did you see the notes that I sent you on these?
I did not.
I tagged you in them, so I thought you'd get a thing, but I'm not quite sure how that works, so we'll see.
I think if I don't open it, I don't know that you've tagged stuff.
Oh,
And I didn't open it.
Alright.
But we can certainly make any suggested changes.
the one was one of the motions. I don't have it right in front of me, so I don't remember exactly, but I made a motion and Ben seconded, and then it appears backwards in the next, in the move seconded column. And then it shows that we voted and approved the representatives giving their thing. So there's no action there. But those are the two.
Are these good?
Nope, never here.
But I move that we accept the minutes as well with those two changes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes as amended. Any other changes?
Thank you for noticing those.
Any other changes? Hearing none, then all in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 6 on the agenda is public comment period number 1. If there's anyone from the general public, which I don't believe that there is this evening. Or anything not on the agenda that anyone who is here wants to comment on. Okay. Then we will move to item number 7, which is reports from representatives. Nancy or Ann, whoever would like to go first.
Thank you for sharing information with other towns earlier this evening. I wanted to just let you know what the town is up to. I think you all know, but I'll just say publicly that our town supervisor is Thomas, who served the town for 14 years, submitted her resignation on January 29th, I think it was, effective February 21st. So as deputy supervisor, I had been filling in first while she was on vacation, and the town board has the authority to make a decision about supervisor after the position is officially vacant on the 21st. At February, we are actually, 3 out of 4 town board members are actually out of town, having currently scheduled our vacations without consulting with one another, so we don't have a meeting, 25th of February, rather. So the first opportunity the town board will have to take action to fill the supervisor's seat is March 10th. And I think it is, I'm willing to continue through the end of the year. I think they're willing to have me, but that decision will be made official. If that is the case, then there may be a vacancy on the town board. And if that's the case, the town board is interested in casting a wide net and finding qualified people, not only from the town outside, but the people in the village interested in serving, which has been the case in the past. That would be a seat for which we'd be interested in hearing from people who would send a letter to our town clerk expressing their interest in the position and their qualifications. But more detail will roll out about that. In terms of the items that are on our agenda coming up tomorrow night, we expect to make an appointment for the recreation director. Not everybody's been notified, so that will be for sure by tomorrow. And we're still working on our own sort of priorities and work plan for the upcoming year. We will be taking advantage of applying for an urban forestry tree grant. We're not yet a tree city like you are. Are you already a tree city?
I was going to announce it in 20 minutes, but yeah.
Oh, so you're making better progress than we are, but there is an opportunity for us to apply for a mini grant, and we're going to take advantage of that. And then we actually are starting a process, the zoning that we adopted in December after our 5-year extensive update process was an entire document, but there are a couple of places in there that some members of the town board want to revisit. And we're starting that revisiting process tomorrow night with a proposal to ask our planning board to reconsider the provision that got put into the zoning for our lakeshore zone and our conservation zone that would have limited the size of a footprint that someone could develop in the zone across the whole zone to a maximum of 2,000 square feet. That's different from the rest of the way the town does it, which is like 5% of lot coverage. And it was intended to try to protect those fragile banks, but it was sort of a one-size-fits-all solution, and we're asking the planning board to revisit that. So we'll do that, but there is, and I think I forgot to send it to you. I don't know if you got it directly on your own. There is a New York State Clean Water Infrastructure funding that's part of the state budget, and I know a number of governments are going to be advocating for an increase in that funding, and I know it covers things like the stormwater that you're interested in. So we've got it on our agenda to see if there's support for sending an advocacy letter on behalf of it. And the other thing that is relevant is, I don't know whether somebody from the village was able to go last week to the county planning department's session. Steal your thunder, but we did go, and the trees, the parks and trail grant that enabled us, our Jacksonville community, the town, to apply last year to get $5,000 to help our Jacksonville Park build the upright part of the restroom, is a grant program that is being re-offered by the county, and the applications open on March 2nd, close on April 2nd, so it's a short window, but if, a part of the village or farmer's market wanted to take advantage of that, that funding stream was removed by the county legislature and is open and available, so I think I just have to maybe, and I don't know, I just sent it this afternoon to
Oh.
Joe Farnham, because we did have a conversation with Joe. I did, the sort of explore sustainability issues, so we're talking, but I think those are probably tomorrow night also, we have a very preliminary presentation being made by the engineers from Barton and Rejudas who are working on the cemetery bridge replacement. There will be a fuller public information session with more details, bells and whistles, coming up on the, I think, March 3rd maybe. But the one tomorrow night is because some of our council members will be there for that one, and so we'll get a little bit of an overview during the beginning of our meeting. So if anybody from here has interest, you can't make a public information session, you're certainly welcome to come along. So I think that's it.
Any questions for Nancy? Thank you. And yeah.
So thanks for talking about those things, Nancy. And the, also, I don't think you mentioned the affordable housing grant. So that's still, so that's another thing that the county has renewed for this year. So that's on a rolling application basis. So if there's anything that you think of that might be applicable to that. And you can also call our planning department and just say what type of things, because it's not necessarily actually, they gave a couple of examples, but, you know, they're trying to be open about it, open-minded. And let's see, conference center, the proposed conference center for downtown Ithaca, we voted on this week, as did the city of Ithaca. And we voted, county voted, as the city does it, go ahead with trying to see if we can look at financing. And I don't know if you've heard much about the conference center. So it's a separate company that's going to actually build it. The city donated the land. There's also going to be affordable housing above it is the current plan. And the city and county is, the next step is that we're going to see if we can work out an MOU or an actual contract to figure out how we can help financially support it if it needs to be supported. And let's see, the sales tax numbers that I gave you before might have to be redone as far as the county's concerned. We thought the AIM funding was taken out at a certain time, but what I'm hearing is the state was a little bit wrong in when that came out. So rather than give you the preliminary numbers, I'm going to wait to make sure that we have those numbers correct. And we'll bring them back to you. I went to CCAP budget meeting today, and you probably heard some of this already, that the new location that we're looking at on Foreign Road by the airport is going to be about $55 million. About 80% generally comes from the Fed, and 10% from the state, 10% local. So they're just in the preliminary stages, but they are looking at possibly 2 to 3 years that will be completed from now. They're a little bit slow, or the process is a little bit slow in getting the electric buses. They were thinking about 1 or 2 they'd have by now. But so the good thing about that is they were able to secure some other funding in the meantime. So they're looking at, hopefully by the end of this year, to have 6 or 7 electric buses. And so that's good. So the plastic bag ban, just to remind you, is going in effect March 1st. And it does not apply to restaurants, you know, carrying a plastic bag. And stores can use their any backlog that they have, or the supply that they currently have in there. So don't be surprised if in March you're still getting them at stores. They are allowed to continue to give out what they do have. Let's see, and we, some groups, including the county environmental group, is giving out reusable bags for people at food pantries, Tompkins County Public Library, the WIC office, and the free clinic. And if you guys have any other ideas where you'd like to see them distributed, let us know.
A few in the town hall, did they give you some?
I'd love to have some.
Okay, just to give out, okay. I'll see what I can do there.
Thanks, Sam.
So that would be great, if you could, then you can let people know you're seeing them. Grassroots, some folks at Grassroots contacted me a little while ago, and, so I just wanted to keep you updated. They're, as far as the health department issues that they're dealing with, so I'm trying to see if we can make things a little bit smoother, help with communication. And, so our interim county legislative chair, you might have heard, is Sean Black. And so we'll be continuing to vote on a permanent chair for the rest of the year. So hopefully we won't have a different chair every month, but we'll see how that goes. Chief Nelson asked me about electric vehicles because he heard the county's working on that. So I talked to him for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to send him information. If you know anybody that's interested, you guys are interested in knowing, because we had hired a consultant to figure out, because we're looking at transferring over, or converting our fleet of almost 80 vehicles over to all electric if possible. We have 3 so far. They're Hyundai Konas with about 300-mile range on them. So, and we actually have had 2 trips to Albany, and one time it made it without having to charge it. Well, it's made it all, but one trip, it made it back and forth with just having to charge it in between in Albany. And then the second time, the weather was kind of cold and windy, so they needed to stop in Oneonta for lunch, and they were able to charge it up enough to make it back here. So that's good. And so, I don't think I mentioned Scott Doyle is our person at planning, so I'll help with that. And let's see. The last thing is, I can't remember, I don't think I've seen this since a couple weeks ago. I went to the state conference for county officials, and we spent a day lobbying in Albany, mostly talking about Medicaid, because we're looking at passing down the cost of that. We ran some numbers that looked like if they were going to pass down some of the costs that they're talking about, it would be an extra, at least an extra $3 million for the county, and which would raise property taxes, the county's portion, 3 to 5%, which would put us above the cap, which would then we'd have extra fines and a series of other things. So tomorrow we're going back to Albany to lobby some more. Because we ran some numbers, and part of what they wanted was they wanted ideas from us of what to do. So we've been working on it, so we have some ideas on other things that they might be able to cut or postpone implementing rather than just passing down, because that would be a never-ending thing if they just kept passing down things to us. And we also think it'd be really unfair, because we found out some other counties that most of their property tax goes to pay just for Medicaid. So that would mean whether, maybe ours would be 3 to 5%, but theirs could be 100% increase, which would be progressive taxation as far as I'm concerned. And so that's our main purpose, and I'm going to be leaving in a couple minutes because I got to go home and pack. But if there's anything else you want us to mention while we're there again, tell me now or let me know. I did see Senator O'Mara in the hall last time we were there, and I said you guys might be contacting him. So that's about it. And that's all I got.
Any questions for you?
I'm just wondering, is the affordable housing and the conference center, is that a package deal, or can one happen? Can the housing happen without the conference center?
So that's a good question. So it's all in one building, and if the conference center, for instance, like the county and city can't agree on backstopping that, then they would go ahead and do just affordable housing. So there would be no conference center. So it's either affordable housing and conference center or just affordable housing. Or actually, I shouldn't say, I don't know for sure if they didn't put the conference center in, if that would be the market rate, the rest of the building. And that's partly why we're under the gun, because as you guys might remember from some other affordable housing project information, you have to have the applications in a certain time of the year, and if not, you don't get a bid, you have to wait another year. So we'll be looking to finalize that contract in the next couple of weeks. And what we're looking at now, I should mention, is it might be, we're trying to limit it to only extra income that the county would have as in room tax. So that, okay, we have a lot more hotel beds filled, that extra, some of that extra money would be able to go for, we put it in reserve, if the conference center needs some money one year, we have that extra money. And we don't want to take it out of property tax. Other ideas that we're batting around are increasing the room tax on Airbnbs. They're only paying 3%, hotels are paying 5%. So we might up it to 4 or 5%. And another option, which to me is least desirable, and I think that I speak for most of the legislators, is to up the room tax for Airbnb and the hotels. So I try to do it fiscally conservative as possible.
What is the city asking for the county? Like, how much, is there a number, how much the city wants the county to chip in?
That's, unfortunately, that's what is kind of hard to vote for us and for the city, because they don't have an actual ask from us yet.
Oh, okay.
For us. So we're gonna, the staff is meeting the next couple of weeks and figure it out.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? Brian? Thank you. Good luck tomorrow in Albany. Item number 8 is Farmers Market, and Evangeline is not here, but
Yeah.
please.
Hi. My name is Robert Walton. I'm
Yeah.
board as well. Basically, we're just introducing the market manager who we hired last week. I'm excited. We are gearing up to reopen the market in May. And this was pretty much the most important thing we had to check off that list going into it. But pretty sure we found the right person. She has experience running, I think, at least 3 prior farmers markets. She's currently farm store manager at Jacket. So we're really excited about that. We are finalizing the vendor application process currently. So that should be happening in the next few weeks. I forget when our first market is, but I think we're doing 26 this year. Yeah. So I don't know if you have questions for her. I am not the most probably knowledgeable person on the board to answer your questions. Evangeline couldn't be here tonight.
Well, if you would just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm Natalie Bears, and like I said, I have a ton of experience running markets. It's what I do, it's my passion. I live in Geneva, and I drove down here every week to go to the market myself for years, because I just love the market a lot. Like, it's one of the best markets in the area. So when I saw the management position come available, I jumped on it. I just love to be part of the community and part of, I support farmers 1,000%. So.
One of the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of months, this board and the farmers market board, is ways to move in a direction where the market manager is more of an executive director and less of anything other than an executive director, as well as how we can perhaps encourage the board to restructure actual restructuring may or may not be necessary, but restructure at least in concept, if not in practice, and move towards more of change some of the modeling to generate more revenue. So I think over the coming months, you'll be meeting with Ben and possibly the rest of us at times to kind of flesh that out. I think it's something that I don't want to see kind of just lie there and linger for another few years until there's another need. Because I think moving in a direction of 100% sustainability, I don't think is the goal. I think the village is invested in the farmers market, but a higher level of sustainability from the market, I think is something that we would like to see. So I'm sure that will be part of the conversation you'll get thrown into over the next couple of months. Anything from the board for Natalie? No? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Do we need to move anything?
We will. So technically, you're paid by the village.
Okay.
So we have to approve the farmers market board's hiring of you, which we'll do in about 3 minutes. So thank you for your interest and welcome, and let us know if there's anything that you think we can be helpful with.
Okay.
There's obviously a lot of backstory and history to kind of how all of this has evolved to where we are today. So we want to make sure that the farmers market is around for a long time to come.
So excited to be part of it.
Great.
And that may also extend, because the town of Ulysses has a number of the farms that produce some of which is not that significant, and they can, some of it is not really up here, and then they help connect them.
Anything else?
Did we ever agree on a salary?
We're working on that.
Okay.
There.
Well, maybe I missed a meeting or something.
Okay.
But maybe I missed something.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you both. Which leads us to fire, CPZR, and farmers market.
Sure. I'll take it in that order anyhow.
Okay.
Nothing to report on fire. Nothing to report there. CPZR, so we have our next monthly meeting a week from Thursday. We are going to use that day, part of our evening meeting, as well as another meeting during the day, to talk with department heads and board chairs to get a better sense of immediate needs in the village and needs particular to those departments and those boards, so that EDR has a good sense of those, moving into finalizing an early draft of the comprehensive plan. The board, or the committee itself, is reviewing some of the early chapters. We plan on having a discussion about possible historical district in the village somewhere. I'm not sure what, we're going to hear more about what EDR is proposing and thinking there. They've given us some reading material to kind of think over. And then we'll continue to kind of talk about what are our next steps, where are we going. The public meeting in March is seeming like something EDR is really driving towards. So we'll start gearing up to get the publicity out around that as well, and get the word out again. That's pretty much it on the CPZR front. Things are going to pick up the pace, I suspect. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more movement this year rather than the pace we had last year. And so then with that, the farmers market. So I guess I'm not entirely sure why they moved there.
We would be approving a contract with Natalie to have her as the new farmers market manager.
So I moved that we hire Natalie as the new farmers market manager. Is that it? I'm sorry, I'm a little lost here.
Technically approving the contract. She's not a village employee.
Right, yes.
We're not
Do we
hiring.
have a contract? Is that something
We have in the past.
we have in the
We're
past?
going to this year,
Yes.
unless there's a restructuring that they want us to do that. They haven't
No,
told us about.
yes. So I'm wondering if I've failed to have that present for us to,
No, you just approve us
okay.
signing.
All right, so I will move that we approve signing a contract with Natalie to bring her on as the market manager.
I'll second.
And a second. Any discussion? If not, then please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Hopefully I don't have to keep doing that every year. I'll continue to get worse at it.
What we didn't mention is that it's a 5-year contract.
Well, that's okay though, so, you know, I mean, it's, changing market management is one of the hardest things you can do to a market. It really affects it a lot. And moving the location.
Hmm.
I managed the market and we moved it across the street. You couldn't find us. It was like it really like it affected our numbers like huge.
Sure.
Like, that's shocking to me, but
Well, the good news is we have nowhere to move it.
it's
So,
just, yes,
Fair
it's a perfect little setup there, so.
So let me just ask, I have an email to Jill Farnham, would she know your email? I just figured they can go out for business.
anything else?
That'll be it for me.
EMS youth stack.
So the big thing is, when I mentioned at the top of the meeting, I was actually hoping Chris would be able to stay to introduce the particulars of the new ambulance. The bids came in last Wednesday. He's been reviewing them since. It looks like there's 3 bids. One, I don't want to say it's a throwaway bid, but it didn't meet the specs and just didn't feel really adequate to him. The other 2 were fairly close. Warranties were a little better through
Thank you.
through Lifeline, as opposed to Osage, which is the company that we've used before. Lifeline is the company that has built the fire trucks. So it's, it's as far as brand and service and that kind of thing, it's pretty much the same, I think. Fire company and department have both been satisfied. Looking at auction prices in there, just for old ambulances, which I guess is in line with the replacement cycle that we have. We're actually somewhat behind, but with the updated cycle that you put together for last year's budget, it's right in line with that. So just so we're all clear. Good. As far as budgeted, but we're it's 178. What is it?
650.
So I would like to move that we authorize the expenditure of up to $178,650 to buy a new ambulance and associated equipment. Subject to 178,650.
Could that resolution please include where we're buying that
Oh,
set of ambulance?
Yeah, from Lifeline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Finding out that we have budgeted about 190, which is obviously is a round number, but it still feels nice to come in a little bit under for once.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second friendly amendment that we indicate that the permissive referendum suspend from the EMS vehicle reserve.
Thank you.
Buyback number to Lifeline for the old one?
Well, so there's 2 different numbers. I believe it's 97 around, but for Osage, I believe it was 9,700, and for Lifeline, it was 7 something.
Less than 10.
Right, they're both less than 10. And what do you think's auction numbers would be is like 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Anyone want ambulance driver on me?
Right? I mean, it is, so after I know a little bit about this, I was just kind of idly searching, and you can get ambulance very cheaply. I mean, if you're interested in the camper conversion or something like
Right,
that,
yeah.
I mean, it's a cheap option.
Go with the old
Bad juju.
Ghostbusters model.
Yeah.
Real bad juju back
Better
there.
than
No,
ours.
thank you.
Creepy camper.
But yeah, less than 10, he had some hope that he could talk them up, because again, it's an
Not like-
agency and a company that we have a relationship with on the fire side.
They're not like fire trucks. Okay. Any other comments, questions, or conversation on our overdue replacement ambulance?
Glad this is happening.
Yeah.
Hearing that we've been kind of kicking it down the road, so.
Yeah, well, I was telling Chris, he was asking sort of about the process of this. I said, well, probably at least two times and maybe three times we've thought that this resolution was coming the next month, and then it never materialized. So it's really refreshing to have
Someone to actually get us.
someone diligently studying the bids, and really, I mean, we went through it. I was very, very happy to have that conversation.
Find a way to reuse the duct tape. Holding you one together. All right, if there's no additional comments, then all in favor of this resolution for permissive referendum to spend up to $178,650 from the EMS vehicle reserve on a new ambulance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
We talked a little bit about this at the meeting, which was actually this meeting, but with the towns earlier. But I just wanted to point out again, Chris and I were talking about getting back to regular reporting, and that should be happening soon. It's just a matter of figuring out how to pull those numbers with Morgan's help.
We're gonna talk
So
to her tomorrow about that.
Hopefully, next couple of days we'll be ready next month, and the town should be in that loop as well. So.
Yeah, we had spent a fair amount of time developing, thinking about the kind of data that would be most helpful to us because we got cars and some other issues. So when you were here earlier, I was thinking it was time to drag that out and share it, and it may or may not be overall use. I know you'd like to use it on standard report, but I feel like I'd like to share
Well-
the kind of data that would be useful to the town.
Right, and I've actually been thinking about it a little bit. I think we may shift to just one report that goes to every municipality so that we can all see all of the numbers. And it's a little bit harder to read. It doesn't look as nice, but I don't see why not. It would be nice, I think, to see that division of that. But we can certainly sort of put you in that loop too, as far as what gets reported out. The big news for youth is what Nancy pointed out, which is that the rec director will be coming on board shortly. The town will appoint them, I think, at their next meeting, and I'm excited, sort of on the edge of my seat to see that movement. And Vicky submitted her last report to the county youth services. When was that? A couple weeks ago or a week ago?
Thursday.
Thursday. Oh my God, a very long time ago.
It was 7th, that was the day.
And I believe that we found a candidate to fill the village. So the village appoints 2 people to the youth commission. We have one, and we've had a vacancy for some time. And I believe we found someone who'd be willing to fill that seat, and who's even excited about doing so. I just reached out earlier today, so hopefully next month we will have someone to appoint. As far as the street tree committee, we were recognized as a tree city officially. Did you get notification of that?
No.
So official notification has not yet gone out. I thought, and I guess I misunderstood this, that it didn't come out until April, but I guess in April we get a plaque or something. And they have approved our application, so that's exciting. And our next meeting, we'll be talking about our meeting with Ben. That's our tree city plan. That's it.
Good. Do we want to talk sidewalk, or is that your meeting that you're having?
No, that
that's
meeting.
CPZR. Sorry, I should have specified.
No, not yet on the sidewalk. I've been chatting with Ben about where that might go.
Okay.
I think maybe you said you might talk it.
Yeah, I'll talk with the group committee about it and see what they're doing. I was telling Ben it's a committee that was very much designed specifically with trees in mind, so I'm not sure what interest will be or what capacity will be, but I'll run it by and see what the response is.
Okay. Anything else on EMS youth or stack?
Nope.
Deb Watkins is unfortunately under the weather. The only update we have is that Tammy did receive notification back from Army Corps that we're officially an agenda item on their docket now. Only took a year. So hopefully we will have some, well, a week for you or a year in general. Hopefully we'll have some movement towards working on the Gregg Street Bridge retaining wall this spring. And I feel like there was something water related.
We're gonna talk about how we're gonna start billing beginning
Yes, so we had mentioned at State of the Village, we were going to be moving to every other month billing rather than quarterly. So we'll be billing for water and sewer 6 times a year instead of 4. We had mentioned starting that April 1. We realized after the fact that April is the month that we re-levy unpaid water bills under the village tax bill, which comes out in June. So if we're in a billing cycle in April, we're going to miss those folks until the following year. So we decided we will have our regular quarterly May bill go out, and then every other month after that, the water and sewer users will receive a bill. So,
So when will that first new bill come?
July.
July.
So May, July, and then every other month from there on out. No rate changes at this time. This is simply a change to the billing frequency. We do have another permissive referendum in the Dropbox for a new DPW vehicle. This is in line with our replacement cycle of every 5 years. I think this truck went 7, actually. So I will actually, since Deb's not here, I will actually make a motion that, subject to permissive referendum, we approve up to $37,000 for the purchase of a new Ford F-250 pickup for the DPW, with funds coming from the DPW vehicle reserve.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Nope. Concerns? What's in that reserve line? Thought I did. I don't see the DPW vehicle reserve.
I think I need to change it. I think, it should have been equipment. I apologize. There's $74,748.
Let's buy 2.
Give it time.
So I'll change the.
No
permissive
jinx,
referendum.
no jinx.
Okay. So with that, a friendly amendment to the resolution. Any additional comments or questions? If not, then all in favor of this permissive referendum to buy a new F-250 pickup truck for DPW, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Police and TACC.
First, I want to give a shout out to Chief Nelson and Officer Covert for helping out at the school district's pantry last week. And for all those people that were at the State of the Village, you heard a lot about other great summary and community involvement over the last year. So I won't rehash all that, but I think we recorded that, so it's on tape. Well, we don't use tape anymore. It's a digital era. No tape. Monthly report in January, 253 calls for service. 4 of those were helping, responding to something in the town of Ulysses, assisting sheriff and state troopers. We are currently in the midst of applying for 3 different grants with a due date approaching in March. So I'll have an update on those at the next meeting. In the Dropbox, you will see a resume for a part-time hire candidate that looks like Rord and I will probably interview on Friday is the hope. So once that's done, his name is Kevin. We will bring him before the board.
We're actually going to talk about that in executive session.
Okay.
At the end.
And another vehicle repair. So we talked about, I think, maybe a few months ago, some electrical issues going on with one of our vehicles, and we tried to get around it, and it just looks like that's not going to work. So you also find in the Dropbox a estimate of $1,875 from Bush Electronics for repairing our vehicle. Essentially, the general problem seems to be with the battery. The car frequently needs to be jump started, and that's less than ideal in emergency situations. So I would like to bring forward a permissive referendum to pay, I don't know if, I don't know if we want to estimate a little higher, 2,000 for the repairs. I trust that the estimate's probably pretty accurate. Maintenance accounts where we would draw from. So I will yield to the treasurer.
To move it up to 2,000? I would say if it's a quote, that's how much we should charge.
Okay,
But we can.
we'll go with 1875. I was just more interested in the account line.
Which reserve?
The police vehicle reserve, right? I don't know, Chief didn't, I don't
Yeah,
know it.
I
don't know.
I didn't get,
I thought he was using a budget line, but.
yeah, I didn't get the actual budget line.
Contractual line, so I don't know.
Okay.
I wish I could help, but it would be the police vehicle reserve.
Okay, then I would move a permissive referendum of up to 1870 vehicle reserve.
Do you know which vehicle?
It is,
Says car 143.
yes,
Accurate.
Is that the 13 or the 15? I can't remember.
2015 Ford utility.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And this was supposed to come out of reserve, not out of the budget line. It just.
When I talked to Chief this afternoon, I thought he was taking that out of contractual line, his contractual. But if you talk to him after that, then he might change his mind.
I would go with whatever he told you because I did not get specifics on.
Well, I mean, if he decides we don't have to, if he decides not, he decides to go to contractual line.
Okay.
So I'll talk to him tomorrow.
No.
Well,
It does matter.
oh,
Well, because the minute they pass a resolution for a permissive referendum, I have the obligation and the responsibility to publish that and make that public for the village residents to be able to petition against
Right.
what they don't.
I understand that, but if he doesn't want to use it, he doesn't have to use it. He can take it out of the contractual line, right?
That's not what they're passing.
That's not what we're approving.
Right. You can't approve one and do it a different way.
Well, you could, because Keith can approve up to that amount separately. And the permissive referendum would just go unused, just as a completely separate, unrelated issue. Doing this doesn't negate the possibility that we can do that.
If the resolution says it's permissive referendum to come out of the reserve line, then
We'd have
once
to
I,
cancel it. We'd have to cancel it.
yeah, I'd
next
have to
month.
rescind it. So you're talking about $150 worth of legal ads
Right.
to rescind it. That doesn't make sense.
Surely we've had permissive referendums that went unused or were used.
Always publishing.
Yeah, it's the publishing that's paid.
Well,
Do we have the money in the budget line?
Contractual has 12,500 spent as of the year.
He really is going to be over budget, and that's what I talked to him about. So when you said this, I thought, oh, well, he's just decided instead of using his contractual line, was to use the reserve.
Why don't we get clarity from chief on where from? If he needs to go to reserve, we'll do it on the 5th.
Okay.
If he wants to use a contractual line, then he can go ahead, but then he's gonna have to clamp down.
Okay. Yes, we had that conversation.
And then I will need as of end of January numbers on this sheet.
I have all those things, like that was my plan. Before the fifth, I'll have it done.
I said, we're just gonna. let
So
that-
I would entertain a motion to table the motion for permissive referendum pending clarification from the police chief.
So
Second. All in favor of tabling the previous pending permissive referendum, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think it's fine if he uses contractual line. He's just gonna have to stop spending. Okay, anything else on police or TACC?
Moving on to Chamber of Commerce, Porch Fest has been announced for June 20th. We have a new chamber website that should be coming online. It's ready to go. We just have to kind of, it is exciting. It's a fresh look, very engaging. And we're going to be flipping the switch on that, probably really any day now. Come to find out, we have some many brochures that have been made that haven't really been distributed, and there's been a lot of talk at some of the recent public gatherings about doing more marketing about the village down at places like down by the falls and their gift shop and stuff like that. So I think we're actually going to get proactive about taking the brochures that are made and actually distributing them. We, in a couple of recent public meetings, there's been a lot of discussion around, what can the village do or what can the chamber do to help with beautification and economic development. So, I think that's something in, hopefully in the coming year, we'll see how March goes, that can be a real focus of mine and working with the chamber on that, because it's something I think everyone's very interested in. How do we kind of clean up, shine up and polish what we have, and what do we need to be more self-sustaining, and knowing that there's only so much government can do with that. But some others have come forward and said, have you thought about, maybe creating some public working groups of volunteers that might be able to help in that regard? So I've been excited by the number of people of various demographics who are interested in looking for movement on many of those. And so we'll see where that takes us in the coming months, but it would be nice to kind of get some stuff moving on that, writing more grants and maybe even pursuing a grant writer for the chamber, at least someone, on a contract basis. And just doing a lot more, we talked about a lot more marketing, just trying to suck in more tourism and Black Diamond Trail folks, but also people down at the lake during the summer, at the falls during the summer, and then also convincing people in Ithaca that a 15-minute drive really isn't that much. And don't be scared, come check us out, kind of thing. So that's very much top of mind right now. I think in the new year, we're really looking to get more visible with that type of outreach. That's it.
Excellent. Any questions or comments, Ricky? Okay, treasurer.
If you notice on your budget sheets, it's towards the end of the general, the back release, it's also on water. It was redlined because at the time I started this, Dusty had talked about not renewing the lease for our backhoe, to just keep the one we had, and that was gonna, but he's since changed his mind, so that's unreaded, for water and air. That was, that's a big thing. No, it's just been budget stuff. Yeah, I had to redo our AUD, Dwayne came up and helped, and that's in, and we're all good with that. Just, trying to help Chief and Chris understand budgets and how they work and that kind of thing, lots of questions from them. My surgery is scheduled for April 14th. So hopefully I will only be out 3 weeks. That's what I'm going with now. So hopefully I'll be back in time for the May meeting. I won't be at the April meeting.
Okay.
We're boycotting.
We're boycotting? Yes, kind of. No, I figured I have a lot to do that day.
This may not be the April meeting to boycott.
Oh, you're right. I think I'll be there. It's May. I'm boycotting now.
Yeah.
You have to be there. It's reappointment time.
Oh, well, that's not fair. Wait a minute.
But you're allowed.
Okay, thank you.
I'll do
So,
yours in
That's
May.
not,
I
that's
mean-
not a boycott.
Who's getting reappointed?
I've talked to,
Who's getting reappointed?
Not sure.
Morgan. Fairly certain about Morgan.
The
Um,
rest is just a roll of the dice.
Hers is-
Just want to say,
hers is a safe seat.
just want to make sure we're not rubber stamping anything here.
Oh, God, no.
that is one thing that Morgan and I had talked about, in our little meeting, is to get Morgan involved more in the budget process. So probably in 3 years, this will be hers. And we only do it once a year, so, and to also teach her at least how to put invoices in the system, so I don't have to. We're gonna work on that.
Okay.
See what happens. Otherwise, I mean, I always have a phone, so text me, call me.
Put down the phone.
I don't know, yeah. That's just weird to me.
So when you retire, you want to keep working. That's what
Weird.
I-
No, when I retire.
That's what I heard, for sure.
Virtual hours with the treasurer.
Right, but anyway, so that's kind of the plan for now, as of right now.
Okay.
I can't think of anything else, I don't know.
Anything for Vicky?
Oh, one more thing, I'm going to email, Natalie's, email is on that resume.
Mhm.
So if you, I'm gonna email her and kind of introduce myself and ask her, when
Yeah.
you guys have decided to come in and we'll have a little sit down. Do you wanna be part of that, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay,
Second one, yeah.
okay,
Just let me know when that's happening.
yeah, I will, okay. Now,
Okay. Clerk.
I don't have a whole lot. I have some personnel things that we need to talk about. We have two county HR came up to introduce themselves to me. A lot of the county department retired and moved on just before the first of the year. So Laura Granger and Aaron both came up to meet me and to sit with me. I was really encouraged by the things that they said and where they're going with the department. And I got the distinct impression that working with these ladies was going to be a pleasure as opposed to just running into obstruction every time I called down there. So Aaron did bring a couple things to my attention. One of them, or two of them actually, are employees that no longer work here, at least haven't shown up in years for a shift, but are still on our roster. So we can talk about those in executive session. We never got resignations from them. nor were they terminated, so I'm just gonna need to have them removed. But I figure there might be questions. The other thing that I would also like to get permission to do is, at this point, we have a part-time officer who we appointed to a temporary full-time position. She has moved on to her new full-time job as of 2 o'clock on Saturday. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put her back to the classification of part-time with the board's permission, of course. Other than that, the office has been really busy. I've been trying to work with Chris as much as possible, so that he's up to speed and he and I are communicating and it's going really well. And I guess lastly, thank you for all of your support in keeping our deputy clerk in her chair. We are not only relieved, we are super happy about that. So thank all of you for that. I really appreciate it. And that's all I got.
Even on 1 hour, even on 1 hour of sleep.
Even on 1 hour sleep, and see where she is. She is a good girl.
I think we'd get a box of cookies or something.
Maybe next time. She's tired. Poor girl.
Anything else for the senior clerk?
You like saying that.
I know. And you know what? Sometimes I just have to let him have something.
Some days.
Some days.
I don't have anything specific to report that isn't executive session in nature, so we will go directly to old business. The only item I have for old business is that we had previously introduced our annual tax cap override with the intention of holding the public hearing tonight, but the public hearing will be at our March regular board meeting, which is the 9th. Any other items of old business? Let's slip through the cracks. New business, we have in the Dropbox for your review. I had asked MRB Group to put together a proposal for their cost for the development of a comprehensive stormwater management plan. They have since provided that. It's item 11.A. Bottom line is to develop the plan as they believe would be the most thorough. Would be a grand total of $45,000. And my intention is, barring any objection, my intention is to apply for a regional economic development grant this funding cycle, which I believe opens in May. I think it's premature to budget for it. I would like to have well, it's not a giant number. I would like to have the plan done with grant money if possible. And then if the plan includes kind of your this is what you need to maintain, then we'll kind of know how we need to budget over a long period of time. If the plan identifies any major project, then that will give us an idea of where we might go after or what we might need to go after for additional grant funding in some future year. But I wanted everyone to see it, kind of see what they're looking at, see how this, what the approach is to stormwater management planning. Any comments or thoughts on that as opposed to kind of adding into a budget process?
If we don't get funding for that, then this would be something we'd hold off on till another budget and kind of come at it that way.
Yes, or so the REDC grants are announced or they're awarded in December. So if we don't get it, then we're essentially walking into our next budget cycle within a few weeks of that, 6 weeks or so. So if we don't get the grant, if we get the grant in this cycle, then we would begin anytime early 2021. If we don't get the grant, then we would need to budget for this in the 2021-22 budget year and split it between stormwater, so we'd really be splitting it between DPW and sewer. As a part of the stormwater, part of the effect of the stormwater planning is some mitigation of INI on the sewer plant.
Just to be clear, is this the same funding we're in line for potentially from Lifton, or is this a different grant? that we're
This
talking
is different.
Okay.
So this is, MRB's proposal is strictly for the development of the stormwater version of a comprehensive plan.
Right. I just want to make sure.
So it's a very expensive multi-page document, basically, which is why I have a hard time, conceptually, I have a hard time budgeting for it. It's necessary, but I'd rather try the grant route first.
Yeah.
Although come to think of it, EDR is going to be right around this number when all is said and done anyway, so it's not out of the realm of what's realistic for these things.
I just want to add just sort of a side tangent comment, which is that I think stormwater, we have a tendency to look at it as like a personal property issue, like artist flooding, because that is like the acute symptoms of it. But I personally think of it more as an environmental issue, right? We're talking lake water quality, creek quality, and that kind of thing. And I just want to emphasize that as much as possible moving forward, because I know that there's 6 or 7 really aggrieved landowners in the village, and I'd rather, I mean, as important as they are, I think it's more important to, in calculus to weigh the health of the lake, those broader, bigger picture things as well.
No, absolutely. And that's actually part of the thinking behind why I think there's a decent chance that we can get the grant funding, because it is much larger. The plan piece is much larger than upsizing culverts on a particular street. Okay, next item of new business is simply the introduction of local law 2-2020, which is an amendment to our vehicle and traffic law. We're still tweaking our 15-minute parking loading zone. We've had a specific request to have only one loading zone on the west side of the driveway that goes back behind Little Venice. Ben and I asked the Masonic Temple folks how they would feel about having 15-minute parking entirely in front of their building,
Or the whole
driveway to driveway strip. They were not in favor, or at least some members of the building were not in favor. So what I'm going to do, or what is written into this amendment, if the board is so willing, is that we will have a 15-minute parking 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 15-minute parking and truck loading zone in front of the liquor store where it currently is. And then we'll have the same 15-minute parking loading zone on the other side of that driveway. And so we'll have 2 spots for drop off. We'll have a spot large enough for a delivery truck, which may partially obstruct that driveway at certain times of the day, but it's better than partially obstructing a state route. And we won't be taking up everyone's personally invested parking spaces.
So this is the driveway between liquor store and Masonic Temple.
Yes. And so one spot on either side of that. I also think it'll help a lot with visibility for folks coming out of that driveway, if there isn't always someone parked there.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Instead of just flooring it and hoping to God.
Yeah, it just,
That's what makes it
That's what
fun.
we do.
just close your eyes and hit the gas.
So taking for a second the optimistic view that anyone is watching this at home, I'd just like to say what I said at the State of the Village, which is that all of this is sort of anecdotal evidence. We don't have studies that are backing this up. So if anyone has like, oh no, don't do that, or something, an alternative suggestion, I, for one, would love to hear it. I think we all would. It feels a little bit like a catch-22. Wherever we move, there's reasons not to be there, but we need some kind of loading zone and that kind of thing. So this sounds like, I mean, thanks for working it out with everyone. It sounds like the best way to go. But any additional information Appreciate it.
And hopefully everyone would agree that double parking is not a good approach either.
Less than ideal.
On an
Especially
already
in an
skinny main
intersection.
street
Yeah.
where trucks already go too fast.
So that's the local law we've introduced. It's a shortened version. It's just the amendment portion where the parking piece is amended, and we will schedule that public hearing for the March 9th meeting as well.
Okay, can we, change that to proposed local law 3 of 2020? There's a whole thing. So the
whole
last
thing.
one that we did in December was not filed by the state until after the first of the year. So they called it 1 of 2020.
Okay.
Depends, so it's just a matter of sequential numbering.
So then do you have the tax cap as 2 already?
I do. I changed it today.
Albany lowers the hammer yet again. You can't get
New
out
York
from
State
under.
Office of the State.
I would have said something to the effect of Albany's a day late and $6 billion short again, but
Again.
that's me. Okay, so that'll be local law 3 of 2020.
Yes, please.
Item number 12, budget working session. So unlike previous years, this will be a little bit different, I think. I don't want to go line by line tonight. I think we can save that for the 5th. Vicki is waiting on a whole host of department head plugins. Of course, we have fire and EMS. We're waiting for DPW and police, and of course, Deb's not here. So if it's okay with everyone, I thought we would actually do the line by line piece at our March 5th meeting. What I do want to discuss budget related is two things. The first one is, I think, fairly straightforward. It's Tom Myers brought to my attention some time ago, and it's in the Dropbox under building permit, which is very small, but you can zoom in. Brought to my attention some time ago that our zoning and building fees with respect to big projects is very, very low. And so he dug up the code and zoning fees for several towns in the area as well as several villages. I asked Morgan to plug it into a spreadsheet so I could look at it, and then I reorganized it to what you see. I eliminated some, I didn't include town of Ithaca and city of Ithaca. I did keep the town of Ulysses for obvious reasons. I included the village of Cuba Heights and the village of Lansing, somewhat different in nature, but they are villages. And then town of Lansing, I actually don't know why I left the town of Lansing in. Just to have 5 instead of 4, I guess. And what you'll find is that we're not far apart when it comes to things like, single-family residences of $250,000 or less. Where there's a huge discrepancy is on multi-unit residential, mixed use, and commercial. And Tom's point was that if we have, say, a large building project over the course of many years that potentially could cost several $1 million to build, and our code and zoning officer will undoubtedly be back and forth to the site multiple times a week or month for years, we will make $3,600 back. The town of Ulysses would make, say, $20,000. And then you get into, I left out the town of Ithaca and city of Ithaca. They were in the $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 range. I am not suggesting that we make any change to single-family residences. I think that that's something we should leave alone to the property owner who wants to build a house for their family. I am suggesting that we consider a change to multi-unit residential, mixed use, and commercial. But I'm not suggesting we go as high as kind of the upper end. I think there's a balance. And so what I'm looking for tonight from a budget perspective, right, Nancy? From a budget perspective is kind of where the board would like to see that number go on the kind of the higher end. And of course, we have one project which has received preliminary approval that is obviously part of this thought process. But it's not, when you talk about, economic development, when you talk about Main Street properties, you think about an abandoned Main Street property. What if a buyer does come in a few years and decides that they're going to tear it down and build something? They're going to invest $2.5 million to build something. Do we want to encourage that by having it cost nearly nothing? That is certainly one approach. Another approach is to do what the town and city of Ithaca have said, essentially through their fee structure, which is they're going to build it anyway, so we're going to make sure we get a good amount of revenue. I don't know if we can take that approach because we're not the city of Ithaca. So somewhere in between is a balance between making it attractive for someone to do business in Trumansurg versus recouping some of the time, which means payroll that will be spent on code and zoning and fire inspector in order to monitor that kind of thing. And I don't have a strong opinion about where that should fall. So I wanted to see what everyone thinks.
I almost feel like it's the easy answer in my mind, but I tend towards the middle. I think I don't want to subsidize anything, but I also don't want to make it, borderline punitive to build something. I also don't think, when you're talking about this is a $5 million plus commercial, $20,000 in that pool is not a big ask. I think I'd like it to, ideally, as much as it could track kind of anticipated time and effort of the code enforcement, zoning enforcement. That's kind of where I would try and target it. But, I don't know. Looking here, based on what you're kind of saying for what town and city of Ithaca, we're in line with kind of Ulysses. That seems reasonable in my mind as a ballpark place.
Great. I like, just based on this, the look, I would say we could just duplicate town of Ulysses. And I would be fine with that.
For multifamily and commercial.
Yeah, both. Maybe keep them flat. But in general, I like the per thousand. I like the simplicity of it. I like that it's proportional. Yeah, I guess ours is kind of proportional, but
Has there been any historic debate over this as to why the rates are so far behind other municipalities? Was there reasons that anyone knows of that, other than to not
I mean, I think in my
take it out of the
time,
well guide?
I think in my
Okay.
time, it's been kind of it's generally what we're charging village residents. So you're always conscientious that you're getting back into your residents' pocket. I mean, I think that's kind of the stance, at least the last 15 years. I think we've raised them once since I've been here.
We raised them once, but not by a lot.
No,
I'm trying to
not
remember.
by
I think we
much or
went,
anything.
it was when Ed was code.
And that's when we started doing it by the assessed value of the project as opposed to just being a flat amount.
yeah, just being a flat fee.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a moratorium for most of my time here, so I have zero frame of reference.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I think the only time that I can remember it being talked about, there was concern that the age of the buildings on Main Street suggests that work and repair is probably needed. And if we make the permitting fees as a disincentive to doing needed work, that they would fall into more disrepair.
I mean, I appreciate that perspective, but I don't know. The way I look at these fees is like it should be trying to offset the time and effort of the office to go investigate it. It's not trying to, like I said, not trying to be punitive. It's just merely like, here's we need to go off of some things. You go off of assessed value because you figure the bigger the project, the more time's probably going to be out there, or whoever's in that office. And I just don't, maybe I'm off base, but for even looking at the construction improvement stuff, something in the $10 million to $20 million, you're asking for $4,500 in fees. it just doesn't seem like it's really going to be some sort of blocker to someone doing a much needed repair, if that's what the price tag comes down to.
It is a percentage, it's. In that ballpark, it's nothing.
I mean, in some ways, the inverse is that then some, village taxpayer are subsidizing the code enforcement officer's position to go review these things. If we were to charge nothing, for instance, and maybe we want to do that, there is that point you're saying, like, kind of subsidize this development in some way, but again, a subsidy of a few $1,000s on a $5 million project is also not anything. So all things being equal, I think we'd rather kind of be whole as far as the time that's being allotted.
I agree.
Is this anything that can be, I'm just trying to think of everything right now, but is this anything that could be, they could come before a village board and ask for it to be pulled out or reduced or rescinded, or is it just, it's not negotiable?
I don't think any of the municipalities have, I take that back. There was one. I forget who. Could have been Cuba Heights, actually. One of them had a fee structure, but then there was an appeal process to the zoning officer. So the zoning officer had the ability to waive it, which was weird to me, but
Again, I mean, to Ben's point, it doesn't seem like it should be a deal breaker in any situation. But.
well, I mean, from perspective, $5,000 is 0.5% of $1 million, right? So it isn't a lot, from that perspective, but it's a 5-fold increase over what we currently have in that commercial column. So
Yeah.
So do we like flat percentage kind of approach?
I like the listed approach. Yeah, whether we go with exactly the same numbers, to me at least, is the logical thing. I do like the idea of giving the board an appeal to this board or whichever the appropriate board would be to waive the fee. In the event that we find ourselves fully behind a project that we think benefits the whole community and we'd like to be able to waive it. If we find a project that we think justifies municipal support, I'd like to have that capacity.
It would be a violation of every gifting policy. in the law.
That's true. Because it's not a tax.
Right, we can't even forgive water rate charges without it being a violation.
So we'll look at flat fee.
Yeah, I guess that's why I brought it up. Just like if it was ever for some reason to be a sticking point,
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about economic development.
Yeah.
Right before the meeting.
would it somehow be at least worth it to build in flexibility to debate it?
Now, when we talk about commercial, we also talking about multi-unit residential over, right now it's 4 units in the zoning that requires site plan. So are we looking at that same cutoff? We're not looking at a commercial fee for someone building a duplex that they plan to rent out the other half.
Yeah, no, above 4 sounds. That's a magical number for a number of different things that I've now learned through going to some of these meetings.
I would say if that's
Like above that, I think you have to get a commercial loan. You can get like a residential loan for 4 and under or something like that. Seems like it makes sense. Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Ben. Like I wouldn't mind just taking the tenure of the season in large part. I mean, maybe we can quibble around details, but I like the simplicity of it. You know what you're getting into pretty clearly.
Okay. All right, I will play with that a little bit and bring something back. Talk to Tom about it, see if he has input on the actual thresholds.
Yeah, if he's seen something that's worked or not worked in Ulysses particularly, that'd be a good thing to know.
The next budget-related item, which actually does affect what we plug in, is we have a handout. Ben already has his. Where's that?
I hit him, you scared me.
This is for board only, no public, because it has individual information, employee names and their health insurance options on here. So I'm going to try very hard not to mention anybody by name. What I'm looking at and want the board's input on is in the Dropbox, there is a folder in tonight's file called health insurance. And the first, which I'd have you look at first before we get into these numbers too much. The first item in that folder is titled 2020 GTC MHIC something, 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 because the rest is cut off on my screen.
Standard platinum plan.
Right. And so over the years, it's come up from time to time. Currently, village employees who are eligible for health insurance who opt a single coverage, they themselves are the only ones covered, pay nothing towards their health insurance. The family plan covers that employee plus anyone in their family, and the village picks up 80% of the difference between the family premium and the single premium, which works out to 89.5% of the total premium that the villages pay. Over the years, it's come up several times. I don't know in the last couple of years that we've mentioned it, but it's come up quite a few times. Should we be adjusting that percentage? Should we be asking them to contribute more? Should we be asking the single coverage employee to contribute something as opposed to nothing? And we've always kind of left it alone and said benefits are part of the reason why people want to work here, and I don't disagree with that. What I'm suggesting is that we don't change the percentage of coverage or the percentage of contribution from the employee, but that we move from what is considered an old style PPO plan to the platinum plan. Interestingly enough, the Affordable Care Act requires all employees with less than 50 employees to adopt a metal level plan, platinum, silver.
Sorry, but what is PPO?
Preferred provider organization. So basically in network, out of network.
Oh.
So in this case, it's Excelis. So everywhere that our employees would go locally is generally going to be Excelis in network. Something that I wasn't aware of until a few months ago, the Affordable Care Act actually requires employees of less than 50, so-called small employers with less than 50 employees to adopt a metal level plan, platinum, silver, gold, or bronze. Because the consortium came into existence in 2011, before the platinum plan pieces became effective in 2012, all of the small employers who were members of the consortium at the time are not technically grandfathered in because of that law, but have simply been overlooked. So the consortium is now coming back, and we are going to take a very hard look, pause and take a half a step back. Every small municipality, every small employer municipality that has joined the consortium since has opted into a metal level plan. So it's only the founding fathers and mothers of the consortium, the small municipalities that still have some lingering old PPO plans, as well as the big employers, which are allowed to have them. And of course, they have a ton of collectively bargained contracts. So there's going to be increasing pressure from the consortium to come into compliance with that piece. From the village's perspective, this sheet in the Dropbox shows the two plans. Starting on page 2, you have a side-by-side comparison of in-network versus out-of-network benefits between the current plan we have and the platinum plan. What I was surprised to find out when I started to look at it is that everything is exactly the same except the copays for specialists. Primary care office copays are the same. And of course, everything out of network is more expensive to the patient under the platinum plan. Prescription drug, and I just got some of this today, so I can share it if you're interested. Prescription drug copays are less for generic.
In the platinum.
In the platinum plan. It goes from $10 copay to $5 copay for generics. We have a 3% generic prescribing rate, which means 17% of the prescriptions that are filled are either tier 2 or tier 3. Tier 2 and tier 3 copays are more under platinum. Which brings me to this sheet. I wouldn't want to do both, certainly. I wouldn't want to increase the employee contribution percentage and change plans. But I would rather change plans than increase the contribution percentage of the employees because of the impact to the village's contribution fees. So if you look at the green column, so the white column is everyone who's currently an employee. As you can see, there's a full-time police officer missing, because we don't only have one full-time police officer currently. We have a front office individual who's on a family in this sheet. That person is currently on single, but I've moved that individual to family because we're looking at next year. So if everything stayed status quo as of today with those two changes, the village's contribution, the village's cost for next budget year would be $377,852. The green column, the next one is if, because DPW has a collectively bargained contract, so we may not be able to move them until their contract comes up for renegotiation. If we move everyone except DPW, in year one, the village saves $65,000. If DPW is willing, and they do have the option to, is willing to sign an MOU and or reopen the contract to make a change to move to platinum. Bearing in mind that if the village was not a member of the consortium, they would have to have platinum. We wouldn't have a choice because we're a small employer. If they're willing to consider that, which I haven't asked them yet, the village would save $91,000 in year one. And then the last column is the one I'm really interested in, which is if DPW says yes, and we introduce what a lot of other municipalities do, and I know a lot of employers do it, but a lot of other municipalities around us are already doing it, which is a spousal option, which simply says, if your spouse has insurance through their work and you choose to take it, we'll give you money. And I picked $5,000 because it's nice and round. So if an employee has a spouse that works at the school and they don't really like their school's coverage quite as much because maybe the copays and deductibles are higher, but it's less than $5,000, then they make out, and we now don't have to cover their piece. And so I've only, this is kind of a wish list, I've plugged in everyone who has a spouse, who has a job, that has health insurance, and what if they all said yes? It would be $154,000 savings in year one. I've already talked to, we've made special accommodations. Back to the green column, you'll see one number in red. We had made special accommodations for that individual to come onto our health insurance, and we would cover it as an incentive. That individual has since said that they would opt to go back to their prior coverage if we pay for it. And it was $500 a month. So that's where that number comes in. Would save that saves us $12,000 on that person right away if we move to platinum. In the purple column, there is a red number with an asterisk of 11,000. I'll explain that in executive session because it's too complex for people to not know exactly who I'm talking about if I try to explain it. So, input, comments, please.
So without diving too deep into these, into the platinum plan of in that network, out of network, is the basic difference we're talking about is more costly prescription coverage for tier 2, tier 3? Is that really the main thing to think about versus what that means for people?
So the platinum sheets that you have in there comparing our current plan to the platinum does not include prescription drug coverage in those columns.
Right.
So immediately, yes, you have much higher costs. It goes from, tier 2 goes from 25 to 35 as a copay. It's a $10 increase. Tier 3 goes from 40 to 70. Now, I don't know what our tier 3 utilization is for village employees, because we don't have any. I'd have to see if I can pull that.
And so 17% of these people are currently getting tier 2 or tier 3.
Statistically, we'd have to, I mean, we only have 17 contracts, so we'd have to actually pull the utilization to see who in the contracts, it could be a family member. But statistically, it's, 17% of someone covered. So it's not
Right,
just-
so it might not be the employee, it could be
Correct.
someone.
On the medical use, where you see differences are specialist copay is $10 higher. There is currently no deductible for, under our current plan, there's no deductible for, I think, an ER visit.
Yeah, it's $35 copay,
$35 currently would go to
150.
$150
For ER.
for ER.
The ones that I looked at today that stuck out were, if you go into a hospital for surgery right now, we don't pay anything. You'll pay a $250 copay if you go under the platinum plan. Pregnancy, 0 copay right now, $750 copay under the platinum plan. There's significant differences in x-rays, imaging.
X-rays go from 15 to 25, that's $10.
But not x-rays, imaging. There's different ones for MRIs, CATs, and that kind of thing. It's a different level.
All the outpatient imaging is close. Labs are the same. Advanced imaging, you have $25 copay instead of nothing.
And the other thing I noticed, Gordon, and and we can talk about it some other time, certainly, the fact that nothing out of network is covered ever. That's a little scary.
It's like 80% is covered out of network. Yes.
Out of network is covered.
In fact, that's the part that seems almost more the same. Everything's covered at 80% after deductible. Seems
Everything at 80% after deductible, your out-of-pocket max would be higher. So currently, the individual out-of-pocket max is $1,500 under the current plan. $1,500 out-of-pocket max out of network. That would go up to $4,000. So there is certainly a benefit for staying in network.
Are we able to see how often people have to rely on some of these, like out of pocket versus or I'm sorry, in-network versus out-of-network?
I can try to get that utilization.
I mean, I know the whole point of
2019.
insurance is you can't predict things, but
Right. I can try to get that. Um,
I mean, on one hand, I want to be sensitive to some of these, are like 1,500 to 4,000, that's more than double the cost, but if it's hardly ever used and that family's going to save money on their premiums,
Mhm.
then that's better for that family.
Where are we saving money on our premiums?
Your premiums are like $100 lower over. Lifetime.
So good.
Well, my
I think more to
intent-
the point
my
is the
suggestion
village
is
can
to
save
save-
$150,000.
Right, all that too. Yeah.
And it costs individuals.
I don't have village
25,000.
I don't have village
25.
utilization. I have
$25.
I have consortium-wide utilization for 2019. So we're talking about 5,700 people, something over, a little over 5,000 people. 1 out of every 13 people had an inpatient hospital stay.
Because I'm insured.
1 out of every 5 had an emergency room visit. Sounds about right.
What is?
1 out of 5 had ER.
Yes.
I don't,
Uh,
like Mary Kate was had to go to Long Island Jewish Medical
It's
Center.
not
Is
covered.
that,
that would be out of network.
how is it, okay. So how do they do it, how do they decide what's happening?
So she's out of network, so that means, was it ER visit?
No, it was a hospital visit. She was there for like 5 days.
So that would be,
I mean, she originally went into the ER.
Doesn't matter, it's still out of network.
Yeah, but that's what I just don't understand what out of network means.
It means it's a hospital or a medical facility that does not contract with your insurance company, right, Ron?
sort of.
Basically.
So out of network would be covered at 80% after deductible. So the deductible
It's 4,000.
No, that's
out of network, out of,
Deductibles,
well, after 5 days, you'd probably get.
500 or 15,000 for individual, or 500
That's
to
the 20%
1,500.
that's not covered.
Well, I
Pretty
was
sure
saying,
you
I
get
know,
$4,000.
I paid $50 and her bill was like $10,000.
Right.
right, so 80% after deductible. So you have to come up with $500.
Okay.
And then 80%, which means you come up with the other 20 up to your out-of-pocket max, which is 4,000. So it means you're potentially on the hook for another 3,500.
So it's just the hospital that doesn't participate in with our. and
Just like a
it's-
dentist who doesn't participate or a doctor who doesn't
Okay,
participate.
I guess I didn't. Now, is it gonna stay at South Blue Cross Blue Shield? That's, I mean, that's kind of weird. I would think almost all of New York State would be.
They're very regional. All the
Oh.
blues are very regional. So
Oh.
downstate is, I think, Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay. all
So
right.
if you need something locally, you're fine, but not guaranteed as you get out of region.
And the problem is that around here, every other carrier that we would use, 'cause remember, consortium and self-insurance, all we're doing is using an insurance company as the administrator.
Right.
But we still get their in-network, out-of-network distinctions.
Okay,
All the other carriers, all the physicians in the area are out of network for them,
okay.
particularly CMC.
Right.
So if you end up in CMC and you have United Health, you're out of network.
Okay, I mean, that explains what I get it now, okay.
When I'm looking at these numbers here, how do I think about what the reduced cost is to the individual? This is looking at village costs.
So the individual still pays nothing
Okay, right.
for premium. The family is 1719. So
I figured that, I had that earlier. I'm gonna find that. We figured if you have family and single insurance, our premium will go from 107 to about 80. Based on that formula, if we're gonna use the same formula. And I figured out for family with family dental, I think that goes to 101 from 130.
I mean, my leaning is towards a cheaper plan all around, and understanding that that does mean that there are probably some scenarios where that can get out of hand, and try to think through. I like Keith's idea of seeing what numbers we can pull to get a sense of how often that really happens and what that looks like.
Right, and I mean, philosophically, the decision is, the decision this board has to come to is we want to take care of our employees. Healthcare is going up every year. Some employees contribute 0. Other employees contribute, call it 10.5% to the premium. There's increasing pressure from all over, but the model that Ulysses adopted, where they took everyone to gold, which has much higher out of pockets, and then contributed to an HSA we have, I'm actually not in favor of, because now you have to manage a bank account, basically. You have to manage a cash flow, which, when done correctly, can be.
I love it. But
Yeah, it's you and me. I mean, when done correctly, you can end up with an HRA or an HSA account with a lot of money in it, and you can decide how often you want to go to the doctor. But it's work. There's a reason why more people don't do it on their own.
we have no batteries left.
Yeah,
There's a
box.
triple A in there.
There's a box of double A's right on that bottom shelf in that cardboard box, I believe.
Oh, I moved the cardboard box.
Oh, no. But yes, we have more batteries, always.
The nice thing about the Platinum plan is that the coverages are identical in most cases, substantially similar in many, and significantly different in a handful. I shouldn't say the coverages. The coverage is what it is. You get I don't want to fall into the trap. You get the health care. How it's paid for changes. Not at all in most cases, a little bit in some, and then the out-of-pocket is significantly different in a handful of situations. And the trade-off being that the employee is not asked to contribute any more premium. They are asked to contribute more when they have a health event. And the village taxpayer as a whole saves a significant amount of money in the short term and the long term.
To be clear, when I said cheaper, I was looking at employee plan, employee cost. Like, I think you're banking that extra, whatever it is, 30, 40, 50 bucks. I can't remember the number now, but that's the risk, but that's the healthcare kind of risk, You're,
The insurance game.
yeah.
So
So why don't you
this
like-
1719, that's what someone with a family plan would contribute over the course of a year.
No, so, sorry, I should have gone through these rows. So the individual, that is the monthly premium for the coverage,
So the 661 is paid every month.
is paid every month, 100% by the village. The 1719 is the premium every month in total, of which the village picks up $1,507.40 of it, or would pick up if we move to it. And the employee picks up the difference, $211.60.
And we'd still pay all the individual.
Correct. Well, that's what I'm suggesting. Just double checking that increase.
So the family plan costs an employee $200 bucks a month,
roughly.
roughly.
And that doesn't change much, actually. So from the current village PPO, the employee contribution is $216 a month. Under the platinum, it would go down $5.
$5 a month.
It would be $5 less. So the platinum, the family, the employee is contributing $212 under platinum from the $216 a month they're contributing now. So they save a few dollars. The additional contribution, quote unquote, comes from utilization.
That's what was going
So rather than changing the contribution percentages to 20%, and staying in the current plan, which doesn't save the village much, we're increasing the cost when care is needed for some of the services, not all.
And so most of the data we can get on this is just for consortium wide, is what you're saying?
No, that's all I have right now
Oh, okay.
on the hospital inpatient and emergency room visits. I am going to get the in-network, out-of-network utilization, try to get that for the village.
Do you have that for the consortium? Out
I
of
don't.
network?
I don't.
What are the X's next to people's names?
Those are folks who have a spouse who have access to coverage and their employer, to the best of my knowledge.
That, by the way, is crazy. That like doing that, like it's just like arbitrage against other companies, which is
Here,
hilarious.
take my money and that'll save us a bunch.
Right, it's
Yeah.
crazy pants.
That doesn't quite line up with that rate column.
There are a couple who don't have access.
Yeah, but still have the sort of buyout option.
Yeah, that's executive session.
Very good.
So the going platinum, the top view benefit for the employee is a few bucks less a month and cheaper generic prescriptions.
Yeah. And I won't try to mince, the reason to make the change is to save the village and the taxpayer money
Sure.
and have employees contribute more to their healthcare costs.
Have you looked at any other scenarios whereby switching to this plan, but then adjusting the cost sharing more in favor of the employee? I'm wondering if there's,
I have not, that would be easy to,
I wonder if there's a place where there's kind of a bit of a middle ground where it's, village saves, the employee saves on monthly premiums a bit more than $4. And it kind of works out well for a little bit better for everybody. And it sounds like we're kind of moving in this direction longer term anyhow, based on us as an employer and.
right, well, you look at it, not that this is gonna happen with a $17 million surplus, but, if the consortium closed its doors tomorrow and we had to go back to buying insurance the way we used to, A, Excellus would be the only game in town, and B, we would be forced into one of the metal plans. Would be no other option. And that's part of the reason why we get, we had, I think, 7 municipalities join last year, and I think we got 6 on the hook for the next couple of months that want to join this year and get coverage in January. Most of them are small employers, and they're buying in the open market, and those numbers are higher than this.
And I don't feel guilty about a platinum plan. is still a top plan. It's not as good as what we have currently, but I think there's a way to kind of mix that around. Try and.
Is there anything higher than platinum? Is that the top? I don't know my earth science as well as I used to.
You don't know your AC.
They go, is there anything more valuable than platinum?
No, platinum,
Diamond?
gold, silver, bronze,
And Ulysses is gold.
with an HSA that they are
Oh,
funding.
right.
Can't have an HSA without the high deductible plan, so that's where the gold comes in. Cuba Heights is looking at going to the gold. Union Springs went to the gold, and of course, they're talking about how much money they're saving. I'm reluctant to look at the gold.
So you can't do platinum and an HSA, like you can't do that.
It's not considered high deductible. In-network deductible, I don't even have it, but in-network deductible for gold is, well, we don't have an in-network deductible in platinum. I think there's an in-network deductible in gold of $500, 50, maybe even 1,000. But then the out-of-network deductible is meaningful.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the relationship even in this one is pretty substantial. Nothing to all of a sudden 20%.
Well, I'd love to
4,000.
just, I'd love to just see anything we can about the areas where we think there will be a significant change in cost, how often our employees rely on those services historically. I don't know how far back we want to go, or just in the last year or two or whatever, but
So I'll look at prescriptions, I'll look at in-network and out-of-network.
I mean, some of these cost savings of the village are not insignificant, especially as you get to like 154K. As a percentage of our overall budget, how that impacts our budget versus how this could impact an individual. I'm kind of sensitive to that. 91 village versus 6K to a household. That's worthy of consideration, I think. So just okay.
Okay, so I will get that additional info. Anything else, either on this or budget related?
Do you want to help second health insurance through these numbers?
I would just say, I mean, thanks for presenting this, because this is really, it's a really nice option to consider in terms of how we, knowing the stress that our budget is under and everything else. It's good
Yeah,
data.
I think the reason we have maintained, altruism aside, the reason we have maintained the health insurance offerings we have is to remain competitive and attractive.
I mean, that's what it's coming down to in my mind. I agree with Ben, that it's hard to feel bad. We're fully staffed in the EMS department right now, but that's unique. It's not easy to.
The trend across all municipalities is towards gold and silver, which is, again, you'll be glad you have the insurance if you have the event, regardless of how much you end up paying. But that is, some of those plans do feel onerous.
Especially measured in percent change.
Right.
Yeah.
So as long as we stay platinum, we're certainly not going to lose out on the competitive side of things. The one consideration would be, we have not gotten, and I don't know if anyone is going to pursue this, but if we haven't gotten council to weigh in on it, the one caveat would be if the consortium determines that small employers in the consortium must move to a metal level plan to comply with the ACA, which is probably correct, but no one's pushed it. Because most of the small employers are already metal level. So our hand could be forced at some point. So yeah, I will look at playing around with the employee share piece too. Anything else on budget?
Thanks for plugging everything in. Would it be possible to put in a formula so that when we change EMS or fire or police numbers, it automatically changes the sheet that you have them separated on?
Yes, there is a way.
Is it a pain?
No, I'm just not very good at it.
Maybe
So,
I'll come
maybe
in.
do you know how to do it?
Yeah,
We can take it from one.
yeah.
Word kind of should be like,
Maybe.
I've forgotten.
'Cause
I'm sorry.
So one of my concerns with the towns is that it's always hard to sort of report back. And I think a lot of it is if we could just be like, hey, we changed these things, now you know, they would feel a lot better about it and the sort of sleazy feeling would go away. Because the changes are never substantial, but I think just the fact of them. So I'd like to have something at the end that's just all of our EMS numbers. This is what changed in our budget process. This is
Well,
why.
I have two separate spreadsheets. One is the one that we showed them.
Oh, no, I know, but you have the one that's part of our general worksheet.
On the bottom, the tab on the
tab.
bottom.
I'd just like to have
Yeah.
that. But maybe I'll come in.
Great, because if you could do that and show me, there's so much that would be so much
The
easier.
problem is it would be better to have it work the opposite way, so it would automatically populate this way. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll come in.
I would say you can do that, right?
You
Doesn't matter which
can,
way
but
it
I don't know a
goes.
way to do both. I don't know a way that you can alter either one and it would go back and forth both ways. I don't think that's possible.
You can go from one spreadsheet to the
You
other.
can go in one direction.
Yeah, I don't think you can go. You'd have to have two columns.
And it would be
That get
easier to go from
confusing.
the big one, that one, to the small one.
It doesn't-
Because I-
We can talk about it now,
Okay.
right? That's-
Yeah,
it's
that'd be
just-
great.
Anything on budget? Okay, item number 13, so our next budget meeting is March the 5th, which is a Thursday. Hopefully we'll have most of these columns plugged in. And we can see where we stand. I need,
The department heads are supposed to have everything to me by the 24th.
And that meeting is 6 PM, right?
Yes.
and we don't have a village-wide assessment number yet. Do we?
No, not that, no, I've never gotten them.
Okay.
I don't know, but maybe Tammy would get that.
I would, and I haven't.
Item number 13 is approval of abstracts. We have a general fund abstract in the amount of $297,141.64.
We approve that abstract.
Motion, do we have a second? Second. Any questions, comments?
Our invoices probably will not go out until Monday, unless we want to borrow some money from one account and put it into the other, because we're expecting the EMS and fire contracts by Friday. Checks.
What is one? Any other questions, comments on the general fund abstract? If not, then all in favor of paying the general fund abstract, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have EMS billing abstract, now no longer reflecting the town of Hector in the amount of $20,007.65.
Move that we pay that abstract. I hadn't made that connection. I was gonna ask about that. That is embarrassing. That is so
No,
embarrassing.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Embarrassing.
Yeah, well, we talked about it at like 6 o'clock today.
Oh, you're embarrassing.
I just wasn't connecting the dots. 'cause,
Any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The water fund, $33,247.98.
I move that we pay the water fund. Abstract of $33,000, $247.98,
Second.
something like that. Got all the digits right.
Questions, comments? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sewer fund, $168,268.54. Big sewer bond payoff.
I move that we pay this abstract.
Sewer bond payment.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any discussion?
The Benner case, sorry.
It was-
NC.
We will have to borrow money, from one of the accounts to cover this.
Till billing comes through. You've got my, Morgan's got my check, so that'll help.
Yay.
All in favor then of paying the sewer fund abstract, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Apologize for myself. I'm not contributing to this.
Agency abstract, $78,830.69. Speaking of the consortium, 2 payments.
Move that we pay that abstract.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are no members of the public currently present, so I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss multiple personnel issues and a pending legal matter.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.